Good morning. Welcome to Toronto. It is my honor to welcome Chief Keith Knott of Curve Lake First Nations to open us in a good way this morning. Chief Knott.
Ane bonjour. Well, that sounds not too bad, but I think we can make a much louder noise than that. Ane bonjour. You know, it's wonderful to learn at least one new word of a different language. Now, you've all learned one word of our language. Now, could I hear what I just taught you? You see, there wasn't too many listening. Ani bonjour. There we go. We're wide awake. Look at each other and have a great big smile. Smile, smile, smile. That's the way the sun comes up every morning. That big smile that he has on his face. I just like to take this opportunity. But first of all, my name is Nika Nkabwe. Makwa Magese Ndora. Oshki Kamok Nonjepa. Kimandao. My name is Keith Knott. I'm the chief of Curve Lake First Nation. And you know, when you enjoy something, everything works perfectly. And I really enjoy what I've been doing. It's not for a name for myself, but it's for the community I serve. And that's what we have to keep in mind. But I would like to take this opportunity and welcoming us to the Mississauga territory. Also, the Williams Treaty, Treaty 20, where we have shared what we have amongst all newcomers. We've enjoyed the company we have had for many years, but in so many different ways. We have journeyed in different directions. I'd like to thank the First Nations Major Projects Coalition for inviting me to be here this morning. You know, sometimes I feel like Midas. You know, what's they're saying again? I just had it in my mind a minute ago, but it'll come back in a little while. And one of the main things I believe that we got to keep in mind is a sharing. We've shared so much over the many years. And we also keep in mind of all those little ones that every child matters. Every child matters. We were little children too at one time and experienced the growing up to where we are today. We need to have and give our little children that same opportunity. We got to show by example so our little ones can see what lies ahead for them. We've enjoyed what we have so far. The beautiful weather, all what creation had created for us, the grass and Mother Earth to walk upon, the beautiful lakes and rivers for us to wash our feet, our hands, our face. But there are other many things in life that we have to keep in mind. By working together, we think of economic development ventures not just only with one, with everyone. We must learn how also to share our knowledge, our skills. At one point in time, we had to learn on what we are today. One thing we're lacking now is skilled labor. We really need skilled labor. I know when I first started out, I was a laborer. And you know, that is what keeps you energized, informed, healthy, and a good example for your family as a provider also. And if you lose that trade or those trades, we're not going to go too far before we are looking for something else. And one big thing we also have to keep in mind, we got to look at partnership. We really need partnership. Good example. If you are married, you have a partner, one who will enjoy the life with you, the one who can really help you in different ways. A partner is great, and that's what partnership is all about. We work together. We overcome the issues that bothers us. Eventually, we work as one. And just like a team of horses, when a team is together, they're both doing the job. They're getting the work done, and it's a lot easier. But you put one horse by itself, it takes us twice as long to do what the intent is. There are many things the first peoples of this land contributed to this country. I think of one comes to mind is the War of 1812, where we never had no telephones, no texts, none of that stuff we have today. And yet the word got out to all the First Nation warriors in this land to make their contributions in order that Canada as a country will stay as Canada. Just imagine if we were one of the states of America. Just imagine who the president might be or was at one time. We all know the story, but you know, our first peoples of this land made so much contribution for newcomers and the people who are here. We also fought in the First World War, Second World War, Korean War. But keep in mind, we didn't have to fight. They couldn't enlist us or draft us because we were not Canadian citizens. We were born in this country, but we weren't born Canadians. You know, and that's one of the things, even today, myself, I wasn't born a Canadian citizen. You can figure the math. I was born in 1936. In 1960, that is when Jean Chrétien, he was the Minister of Indian Affairs at the time, decided that all First Nations people become Canadian citizens. It wasn't of our choice, same as we struggle today on account of an act that is put upon us, which is called the Indian Act. You know, the opportunities for us was taken away many years ago. And if we can gather like this morning and tomorrow morning and rejoice in a way that we're finally back here participating, whether it's in economic development or participating as myself speaking before you. We weren't allowed to do that at one point in time. We couldn't. We're put on reserves, and as you know what a reserve means. Take, for instance, if you make a reservation for a restaurant, it's there for you till you finish eating. It's no longer your reservation. That is the same way with us. We are put on reservations. And they intent at one point in time that there will not be any more what they call Indians. And then they take the land back because we won't need it anymore. That's your reservation. There are so many things I could talk about, but I guess I'm limited on time. I could talk to you here till midnight tonight as far as that goes on the activities and on the treatment of the first peoples of this land. And that's why I say so much, every child matters. Our little children were taken from our homes and put in residential schools. You know, it breaks my heart just to see and hear what those little children went through in such a young age, the torture that they faced, the struggle they had. And that's unacceptable. And that's why I say, stay close to your children. Give them a hug whenever possible. They are the future. Those are the ones we got to show the way and the truth. We speak a lot now of truth and reconciliation. We, the first peoples of Canada, know the truth. But it's going to take a long, long time to reconcile of what has happened to the first peoples of this land. And you notice I'm not using Indigenous, Aboriginal, or Indian when I speak. I am none of those. I am Anishinaabe, a very proud Anishinaabe. One who enjoys life, enjoys people, and when you have a smile on your face, it's just like the sun shining in. So I'd like again to see so many smiles here this morning. I see a few here. Let's see some more. Oh, isn't that wonderful? It only takes a second to smile. And that's the main thing. Enjoy what you do. Enjoy life. Because we have been through a lot as the first peoples of this land. And don't forget, share what you have. Even if it's a smile, share your smile with someone. If it's a tear, share your tear with someone. Life is beautiful. Beautiful. The amount of time we're allowed to roam this universe. Take as much joy and pleasure out of it as you can. Time passes by so fast, it is unbelievable. As I said mentioned before, we have to show by example. Let's think of these little ones. They look up to us. That's who I want to be. How do we get there? Show them the way and how you got to where you were going. You know, exciting, very exciting. And if my words this morning helped anyone at all within this room and understand a little bit of the first peoples of this land, I wished I had more time to spend speaking of this land, of the people of this land, and all the areas in between. You know, it's really joyful. But if you enjoy life, everything comes from within. It's not the exterior, it's the interior that counts. We may look like a rose, but sometimes the fragrance from the rose is what tells the story. So I thank you very much for listening to me this morning. What a joy it is to be amongst us this morning. And I hope to see you around today, tomorrow. And when I see you around, let me see that smile on your face, the joy that you share. Even if you have to shout out loud, you know, and really great, we'll know that you care. I'm sure you care. But you must remember, we're only here for a little while. Share what we got, our little ones. Our little ones is very important to us. We like to see them grow up like you are here today. Absorb what's around you. Connect with the Creator. Connect with Mother Nature. If you take one moment and look around you and see what Mother Nature has created for us, there is so much out there. There is no need whatsoever for anyone to be homeless. No reason whatsoever a child should go hungry. The Creator and this country has provided all of those elements for us to use and share with one another. So at that note, I'll close the books on this morning's speech, and hopefully I was able to help you out or understand a little bit. I'd like to go more in depth regarding the peoples of this land and the struggles that we went through. But as long as the opportunity is there that we can work together and do things together, share things together, we'll go a long, long way.
Let's give another round of applause for our dear elder, Chief Keith Knott. What an amazing way to start the morning. Those stories that the chief shared were very, very dearing and really touched my heart, because I know that a lot of us in this room here can relate to those stories. So, good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the 7th Annual First Nation Major Projects Coalition Conference. We're very, very excited to have our conference here in Toronto. It's the first time for everything, so we're looking forward to an amazing day. With that, I just wanted to start off and say that we're very, very honored to be on the traditional territory of many First Nations, including the Mississauga of the Credits, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people and their ancestors. I know that this morning we started out with a smudge with Diamond Willow, and many of you came forward to really embrace the day and, say a little prayer to Creator. I think that we're all here to learn, we're all here to share, and I think that great things are going to happen in the next 2 days at our conference. I can really feel the energy in the room. I was just looking at everyone talking and engaging, and I think it's really important because our conference this year is Our Collective Advantage, Indigenous Consent. So over the next 2 days, we're going to be talking about the importance of free prior informed consent, but in particular, the advantage of Indigenous consent. As we heard from industry and government experts in Canada and Canadians around the world, you'll likely hear a common thread that Indigenous consent of value to enhancing our relationships with companies and investors. You'll see that prioritizing Indigenous really sells itself, that working with us, there's many success stories, including projects that the First Nation Major Projects Coalition has helped support our members in. We are living proof, and we know that if we walk on this common path together, that we'll really create new ideas and new perspectives. So I invite you to please enjoy your networking events. I know that there's a lot of receptions that are planned over the next couple days, and we really enjoy that. We like to see that. We like to see people coming together and having good conversations about how we can work together, how we can make the lives of Indigenous people and Canadians better for all of us, increase the livings of our increase the way we move forward, the way we raise our kids. We want them to have good education. We want them to have good lives. You know, what's been passed down to us, we're so fortunate. So with that, I would like to welcome a dear friend who's here, National Chief Cindy Woodhouse. Would you please join us?
Wow, what a group this morning. I'm so thankful to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak, and I'm the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. I just want to take this opportunity to give thanks to the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, for welcoming us into their territory, and acknowledge these lands are the traditional homes of the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. I'd like to also acknowledge the First Nations Major Coalition for hosting the 7th annual First Nations Major Projects Coalition Conference. I'd also like to thank Chief Knott and Chief Gale for opening us up in a good way. This event provides an opportunity to discuss critical issues for First Nations benefiting and advancing economically within North America's global economic market share. Over the next 2 days, we will explore the successes of First Nations and build upon them. The Assembly of First Nations continues to advocate for economic policies and programs that respect First Nation self-determination in the national and global markets and the traditional economies of First Nations. The advancement of economic growth, prosperity, inclusion, and sustainability for First Nations is critical to supporting First Nations well-being. Internationally, the AFN is actively working to expand economic opportunities and market access for First Nations goods and services. We cannot emphasize the point enough. Respecting the rights of First Nations is fundamental to creating meaningful space for First Nations participation. Budget 2024 highlighted that significant work remains to achieve true economic reconciliation and the ongoing need for enhanced support to create quality jobs, financial support for entrepreneurs, and access to capital for equity and major projects within our communities. True economic reconciliation also requires access to lands and predictable, sufficient funding for First Nations governments and businesses to succeed. I was pleased with the announcement of $5 billion in loan guarantees through the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program that will assist First Nations in accessing affordable capital. However, further work is required to ensure these resources are effectively aligned with First Nations economic development priorities. So I want to thank this whole team here for that, your work on that, your tireless effort, and your advocacy. I lift you all up. Just in closing, it's just wonderful to see all of you. Thank you, Elder, for opening us up in a good way as well. I want to, my dad always tells me, make sure you lift up people while they're here, not when they're gone. And I have a friend of mine, Blaine Favel, if you can stand. He's been a mentor of mine for many, many years, but he's got a Harvard business degree, and not many of our people have that, and I want to uplift you in a good way. He's about to choke me. Just in closing, I want to thank you once again for allowing me to join you today. And as National Chief, I'll be here to walk with you, to work with you, to hear from the experts. I'm not the expert. I'm in Ottawa banging on doors over there. And, and I had the privilege of being in the States last week at the United Nations event, and I was able to meet the U.S. tribes and the tribal president down there, and him and I are working on renewing an MOU between cross-border and the States and our people on this side. So I look for your support on that, your thoughts on that as the months go on, as we begin this, trying to establish a renewed relationship on both sides of the border, that our people never had those borders before, that we traded. My brother just found an artifact, and this is stuff found way down south. How did that get here some thousands of years ago? So I think we have to get back to our roots and get back to who we once were. So miigwech, thank you so much.
Thank you, National Chief. It is my honor to introduce to you the Ontario Minister of Energy, the Honourable Todd Smith. If you could come to the stage, please. Thank you. It's glaring. I can't see where you're...
Well, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to join you. Thanks, Chief Knott, for those words. It was good to see you and hear from you again this morning. And I don't want to start off on too controversial a note. I am Ontario's Minister of Energy. I'm a big hockey fan. We've brought a lot of energy to this room already, but I was wondering if it would be possible to transfer some of this energy that we have here in Toronto to Boston for Game 2 tonight. Now, I know this is controversial because we just had Chief Woodhouse from Manitoba up on the stage, and we had Chief Gale from BC on the stage. I'm assuming there are Jets and probably Canucks fans over here. But haven't seen anybody from Alberta up here yet, but look forward to it. It's a pleasure to be here, and let's hope the Leafs can pull it together tonight, right? Thanks to everybody for coming out this morning, and there certainly is some energy in the room, and I am the Energy Minister for Ontario. We have a lot of energy at the Ministry of Energy as well, and we're looking forward to sharing that right across our great province. Let me start by saying, first of all, how impressed that I am by the First Nations Major Projects Coalition and the success that you've had in the 7 years since your formation. And it's great to have you here in Toronto for this year's conference, and a great crowd from what I can see from my podium up here on stage. When I learned that you have a project portfolio of greater than $45 billion, that brought home a couple of facts for me. The importance of energy infrastructure to our economy and the value of strong partnerships. Indigenous involvements, partnerships, leadership, they're all essential to the success of our energy projects across Canada. And that's certainly true here in Ontario, where partnerships with Indigenous communities in the energy sector are vital to meet Ontario's energy needs and realizing our shared economic development and reconciliation goals. Indigenous communities are already important leaders and partners in Ontario's energy sector. Many First Nations communities currently own or are partners in energy generation projects across the province and are involved in several existing and planned major transmission lines. This leadership is driving new economic and community development opportunities for First Nation and Métis communities. For example, this is one of my favorites, Wataynikaneyap Power's line that brings light. I always call it the line that brings hope. It's a priority transmission infrastructure project. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. It's in the final stages now of connecting 16 remote First Nation communities to the provincial electricity grid. And I was so pleased to join Kingfisher Lake First Nation back in November of 22 to announce their connection to the province's clean electricity grid. And I was also pleased last September to join the folks at North Caribou Lake First Nation in celebrating their hookup to the province's clean electricity grid. And what a great celebration that one was. It was outside, moose meat was everywhere, the fires were burning, the kids were off school, playing in front of their brand new school in North Caribou Lake First Nation that was only accommodated because of the fact that that community was being hooked up to the provincial grid. When complete, the Watay project will connect more than 18,000 First Nations people living in remote communities across northwestern Ontario. 1,800 kilometers of transmission line through the northwest. It'll make Watay the largest Indigenous-led infrastructure project in Canada and the most far-reaching First Nations grid connection initiative in Ontario's history. However, there are still more First Nation communities across northern Ontario that continue to rely on costly, difficult to transport, and unreliable diesel generation for electricity. These communities deserve the same opportunity to connect to the affordable and reliable and clean electricity to power their homes and new schools and health centers and businesses as well. And this is why our government is working closely with interested Indigenous partners to identify clean electricity supply options that meet their unique needs. And earlier this month, just a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact, up at Kakabeka Falls, which is a beautiful spot just outside Thunder Bay, we announced our province's desire to work in partnership with 5 Matawa First Nations partners. Everybody there, by the way, was unanimous in their support for the Toronto Maple Leafs going forward. But Chris Munoz was not there, and I know he often sports a Montreal Canadiens cap. He wasn't there, but they were part of it for sure. Martin Falls, Ibamatung, Nishkantaga, Nabinimik, and Webekwe First Nations, all working together, all remote communities looking to explore ways to end their reliance on diesel generation for electricity in their community and the limits, unfortunately, that come with that diesel generation. Across the province, we continue to support communities and organizations to build their capacity to participate in the energy sector, including funding for community energy planning and implementing their own local energy initiatives. In November, I had the opportunity to announce that our government was increasing our annual investment to $15 million in funding every year for the Indigenous Energy Support Program. And that's delivered by the Independent Electricity System Operator. And I saw Leslie Gallinger from the ISO here, and I'm sure you'll probably hear from her over the next couple of days. As a result of that work, 93 recipients received funding across 4 different funding streams that support the equitable participation of Indigenous communities in Ontario's energy sector, helping to build local capacity, develop energy partnerships, enable energy efficiency measures, and support skills development and training opportunities. We've been making tremendous progress in the energy sector here in Ontario, and the participation and leadership of Indigenous communities have been and will continue to be essential to that success. Last July, we released Powering Ontario's Growth. That's our government's plan to meet the increasing need for electricity over the next several decades. Powering Ontario's Growth lays out plans to build the electricity infrastructure that we're going to need for a more electrified province, where economic growth continues to drive new jobs, emissions continue to be reduced across the province, and families continue to have access to affordable energy. Our plan builds on the significant action that we've already taken to meet demand through the end of the decade with major projects and procurements, many of them with the full participation of Indigenous partners. For example, last year we completed the largest procurement of energy storage in Ontario and Canada's history, resulting in contracts with 15 different energy storage facilities, and 9 of those projects, 9 of the 15, have at least 50% Indigenous ownership, making them key contributors and partners in the energy transition that's taking place here in our province. And there's a whole lot more that we can do together. That's why Powering Ontario's Growth ensures that Indigenous participation and leadership and support for energy projects will be a key feature of future procurement initiatives in Ontario's energy sector. We're committed to early engagement. We're committed to meaningful consultations with Indigenous leaders and communities as we develop new energy supply and transmission opportunities. So I look forward to the ongoing participation and the ongoing leadership from Indigenous communities and partners across the province as together we work to provide an energy future that's reliable, affordable, and clean for every single community in Ontario. Thanks for the opportunity to join you today. Let's all say a prayer tonight at about 7:30, all right, for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I hope you have a great conference over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the Chiefs and to Minister for setting us up for a very good day and starting us off in a good spirit. Good morning and welcome to the 7th Annual First Nations Major Projects Coalition Conference, Our Collective Advantage, Indigenous Consent. Thank you to over 1,500 delegates who are registered and come to this conference for the next 2 days to explore the themes of Indigenous consent as a collective advantage for all of us and the entire Canadian economy. My ancestral name is Thatcha. I'm a member of the Ntlaka'pam First Nation in southern British Columbia and the U.S. Pacific Northwest, and it is my honor as the Chief Sustainability Officer for the Coalition to be one of your co-hosts today. I would also very much like to thank our patron sponsor, RBC, for their generous support of this event and the work that they are doing with our peoples across the country.
Amahilu, Simgiyat Sigmanach Gubukawelsh. Good morning, everyone. Ane bonjour. Thank you, Chief Knott, for the welcome and prayer. Thank you to my sisters, Chief Gale and National AFN Chief Woodhouse, for your continued leadership. My name is Negwit Zen, but most know me as Jolene Foster. I am Gitsan and Wet'suwet'en, and I belong to the House of Nista. My Blackfoot name is Ahyape Namiyaki, which means home gun woman, or out on the warpath, getting enemy guns to bring home to our nations. I am the managing partner for Nation Building in Deloitte. This is an Indigenous-led nation-building practice that is supporting nations in their journey to sovereignty. We are activating our 15,000 people across the country to co-develop solutions with nations, governments, and corporate Canada to modernize governance systems, build operations of excellence, close infrastructure gaps, and grow Indigenous economies. I am all about the how to operationalize and implement our inherent rights and title, treaties, self-governance, and most importantly, sovereignty. Doing nation building and getting to Indigenous consent will require all of us working in collaboration. Last night, it was a real pleasure to be sitting with Bill Lomax, my brother from the Gitsan Nation, and my sister, Chief Gale, and the CEO from Enbridge, Greg Abel. And it was really interesting to listen to the stories, and most interesting when Greg Abel asked my sister, Chief Gale, so did you envision that this is where you would end up one day, here and this big, for this event to be so big? And it was really interesting to listen to Chief Gale's response in saying that, you know what, I think we envision further than this. This is only the beginning. And this has been such a struggle to get here today, but the work isn't done. And there is so much more work to do, and we are all still struggling and need your help to do it, and we are only going to get there together. I'd like to thank, and I am so honored, that Nilo, Mark, and Chief Gale and the FNMPC board has asked me to co-host alongside my brilliant friend, Mark Budlastley.
Over the past 50 years, court decisions, constitutional inclusion, investor sentiment, regulatory changes, and most recently, the free, prior, and informed consent provisions of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People have shaped how society views the inclusion of Indigenous rights in major projects. Indigenous consent of major projects is now a baseline requirement for major project success in Canada.
Recognizing and integrating Indigenous rights into decisions about the environment and the economy is now not only crucial for project success, but is essential for Canadian society and businesses to gain a collective benefit that positively influences the entire economy.
This conference serves as a platform for FNMPC members to convene Indigenous nations, business, and government agencies to convey the message that FNMPC members are eager to contribute to the greater Canadian economy and are mindful of our part in securing a brighter future for not only their nations, but all Canadians.
Over the next 2 days, you will be hearing from Indigenous, government, and industry leaders who will share best practices, stories of success and failure, and answer thought-provoking questions so that we can all learn about how our collective advantage is really Indigenous consent.
This year, we are excited to have a dedicated app to this conference. The app was part of your registration package. Simply go to the conference app to find other delegates who are here if you'd like to speak to them, or for questions and answers during the panels, please use the app. The apps will send the questions to the moderator to pose on stage. If you have any questions about how to download the app or use it, please do not hesitate to contact one of our staff members who are wearing the orange shirts or anybody else attached to FNMPC to help you with that. We would very much like to thank our volunteer sponsor, Tories, who has been very instrumental in helping us organize this conference. Your support is very much appreciated. I would like to take a moment to thank also our registration sponsor, Synovus, who helped us make this app and the registration upstairs possible. Thank you to Synovus for your ongoing support of FNMPC.
This year, we are once again excited to showcase Indigenous artisan vendors at the FNMPC conference. We have almost a dozen Indigenous vendors from local First Nations with items for sale at the Indigenous marketplace. From jewelry and carvings to clothing and beadwork, we encourage all delegates to visit the trade show area in the foyer just outside on this conference space and support Indigenous small business.
We are also excited this year to have created more opportunities for you as delegates to network between Indigenous parties, government officials, and First Nations in attendance today. We want to thank Enbridge for your sponsoring of the Leaders Reception, and to Rio Tinto for sponsoring our opening reception last night, and to Newmont for sponsoring the closing reception.
Also located on this floor is our networking lounge sponsored by Energy for a Secure Future. This is a great place to have a side meeting or take a phone call.
We'd also like to acknowledge that Elder Mark Salt, to thank him as our elder in residence this year. His room is on this level, just beyond the foyer area in Sheraton Hall C. Please follow the signs to find it. It is now my honor to introduce to you our CEO of the FNMPC, Nilo Edwards. Nilo, would you please come to the stage for opening remarks and introduce us to our first fireside chat?
Well, thank you, Mark and Jolene. Good morning, everybody. I want to acknowledge Chief Keith Knott for welcoming us in a good way. And I want to also acknowledge the words spoken during our open ceremonies, Chief Gale, National Chief Woodhouse, and Minister Smith. thank you for all being here. It is my honor to introduce the first panel of the conference, addressing reconciliation and the role of the financial sector. It was 10 years ago that First Nations gathered in Prince George, BC, to discuss ways in which to finance their participation in major projects. The foundational principles from that meeting gave way to the establishment of the First Nations Major Projects Coalition a few years later. And since that time, the coalition has led conversations at the provincial and national level about reducing the cost of borrowing so that First Nations can be partners in deal structures that are co-developed, that reflect community priorities and vision, and create fair economic returns. The need for First Nations to have more options and more flexibility under which projects can be financed has never been greater. Over the next decade, the Coalition's internal research estimates some 473 major projects will be proposed or built in this country on Indigenous lands, representing a total capital outlay of about $525 billion. From around that, about $50 billion or more will need to be financed in Indigenous equity. The Coalition, in support of our members, and with help from partners like the Business Council of British Columbia and the Business Council of Canada, has been able to draw government's attention to the gaps that exist for First Nations to find a competitive cost of capital. The results of our efforts have been realized in recent announcements by the Government of British Columbia and their First Nations Equity Financing Framework back in their February budget, and last week's announcement by the Government of Canada in Budget 2024 of the establishment of a national Indigenous loan guarantee program. The conversation that is about to take place before you on reconciliation and the role of the financial sector could not be more timely or more relevant. So would you please welcome me, would you please join me in welcoming to the stage, I needed a second coffee this morning, Chief Charlene Gale, Chief of Fort Nelson First Nation and our board chair, Dave McKay, President and CEO of RBC, and my